I accept your rejection. You can't, before you give it. Blood exploded from his nose. He dropped, hard. His wolf ripped free, massive, screaming, out of control. The chains on her wrists shattered. Gold light poured from her eyes. The crowd scattered, because whatever just happened, it broke something that can't be fixed.
Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from right now, and whether you'd ever have the guts to do what Seraphine just did. The high circle reeked of ozone and wet stone. Seraphine's bare feet were numb against the plaza's ancient marble, her toes sliding slightly in the pooling rainwater. The ceremonial iron around her wrists wasn't silver, that would be too merciful. It was spelled iron, the kind that burned cold instead of hot, that made her bones ache down to the marrow. She'd stopped trying to heal the split in her lip. Let them see the blood. Let them remember she'd bled before she'd even arrived. Around her, the assembled court formed concentric circles of judgment. War commanders in black leather that smelled of weapon oil and old battles. Nobles dripping with gold chains that clinked with every scandalized whisper. Visiting alphas whose territorial musk made her stomach turn. And the elders, 7 ancient wolves whose combined age exceeded most pack histories, perched on stone seats like carrion birds waiting for the show. At the center of it all stood Dominic Ravenclaw. Alpha King. Stormbringer. The wolf who'd never lost a challenge, never bent a knee, never shown weakness to anyone in his 32 years of existence. He was beautiful the way a winter storm was beautiful, all sharp edges and deadly cold wrapped in human skin. Dark hair plastered to his forehead by rain. Gray eyes that could freeze blood in your veins. A jaw that looked carved from granite and a mouth that had forgotten how to smile years ago. Seraphine had loved him for exactly 14 days. It had taken her 3 more days to realize he would destroy her rather than admit he felt anything at all. The mate bond between them wasn't a gentle pull. It was a howling, consuming thing that had manifested the moment their eyes met across the healing ward. She'd been tending to injured warriors from the northern incursion. He'd been inspecting the wounded, ensuring his soldiers were being properly cared for. Their eyes had locked. And the world had tilted. She'd smelled pine smoke and winter wind and something wild that made her Omega instinct scream mine even as her rational mind whispered impossible. Across 20 feet of space, she'd watched his pupils blow wide, watched his nostrils flare as he caught her scent, lavender and rain and something underneath that she'd never been able to name. The bond had snapped into place like a bone setting. Wrong, he'd said later that night when he'd cornered her in the empty corridor outside her quarters. His voice had been granite and gravel. This is wrong. She'd tried to touch his face. He'd caught her wrist hard enough to bruise. Your Omega, he'd continued, each word deliberate. No bloodline. No value. No political advantage. The bond made a mistake. Bonds don't make mistakes, she'd whispered. The moon goddess. The moon goddess doesn't rule here, Dominic had snarled, and for just a moment, she'd seen his wolf flicker behind his eyes, silver white and furious. I do. He'd released her wrist and walked away. For 2 weeks after that, Seraphine had felt him everywhere. In the back of her skull like a constant pressure. In her chest like a second heartbeat. In her dreams, where his wolf ran beside hers under a moon that never set. And she'd watched him unravel. Dominic Ravenclaw was control personified. Every word measured. Every movement precise. Every decision calculated 3 moves ahead. But around her, that control slipped. She'd seen his hands shake when she entered a room. Seen him grip doorframes until the wood splintered. Heard him snap at advisors who'd served him for decades. Watched him disappear for hours into the training grounds, returning with shredded knuckles and eyes that glowed faint silver. The bond wasn't just affecting her. It was destroying him. And rather than admit that vulnerability, rather than acknowledge that something existed beyond his perfect control, Dominic Ravenclaw had chosen spectacle over honesty. He'd chosen to reject her in front of everyone. The rain hammered down harder, turning the high circle into a percussion symphony. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the gathered wolves in stark white flashes. Dominic raised his right hand, the formal gesture that began every rejection ceremony. His voice would come next. The prescribed words that every Alpha learned. I, Dominic Ravenclaw, Alpha King of the Storm Territories, reject you. I accept it. Seraphine's voice shouldn't have carried. She was Omega. Small. Powerless. The rain should have swallowed her words before they reached the first row of observers. Instead, they rang out like a bell. Clear. Undeniable. Loud. I accept your rejection, Alpha King, before you give it. The rain kept falling. No one else moved. Dominic's hand remained raised, his expression frozen somewhere between shock and fury. His jaw worked soundlessly. The ceremonial words he'd prepared, all the careful, political language designed to humiliate her while maintaining his dignity, died unspoken in his throat. Because she'd just broken the most fundamental rule of rejection ceremonies. The rejected doesn't speak first. The rejected doesn't accept before the rejection is offered. The rejected certainly doesn't smile while doing it. But Seraphine was smiling. Not a happy smile. Not victorious. Just tired. The kind of smile that came from finally letting go of something you'd been holding too tight for too long. I release the bond, she continued, lifting her bound hands toward the storm-dark sky. Water streamed down her arms, mixing with the blood from where the spelled iron had started to crack her skin. I claim no protection. I ask no mercy. I walk away whole. A ripple of shock spread through the court like a stone dropped in still water. One of the elders, ancient Morgana with her milk-white eyes, leaned forward on her stone seat. Impossible. The words are wrong. The ritual is complete, Seraphine said, turning to face the old wolf directly. Unless the Alpha King would like to reject someone who's already rejected him? The silence that followed was absolute. Even the rain seemed to hold its breath. Dominic finally found his voice. It came out strangled, nothing like his usual commanding tone. You don't get to choose the terms. Seraphine looked at him then, really looked at him, and for a moment, she saw past the Alpha King mask to the man underneath. The one who'd stayed away from her because he was afraid. Not of her. Of what she made him feel. Of the loss of control. Of needing something he couldn't command or conquer or kill. I already did, she said softly. And that's when the mate bond snapped back. The pain hit Dominic like a battering ram to the spine. 1 second he was standing in the rain, fury and confusion warring in his chest as he tried to process what this impossible Omega had just done. The next second, agony detonated through every nerve ending in his body. His wolf, the ancient, battle-scarred beast that had dominated every challenge, crushed every threat, never once flinched, went absolutely feral. Mine, it held inside his skull with such force that Dominic's knees buckled. Ours. Mate. No rejection. No. No, Dominic gasped out loud, hands flying to his head as if he could physically hold his skull together. No, But his wolf wasn't listening anymore. For 32 years, Dominic had maintained iron control over his beast. He'd learned young that an alpha who couldn't master his wolf was a danger to everyone. So he'd built walls. Discipline. Perfect, unbreakable control that had become as natural as breathing. Those walls shattered like glass. Silver light exploded from Dominic's body, not the gentle glow of a wolf preparing to shift, but violent, crackling energy that smelled like lightning and tasted like metal. Thunder rolled overhead, but it wasn't coming from the storm clouds anymore. It was coming from him. Alpha King, someone shouted, his head commander, Thane, built like a mountain and currently looking at Dominic with genuine fear. Dominic tried to respond. Tried to issue orders. Tried to do anything that resembled control. Instead, his wolf manifested. The spectral form tore free from his body without permission, without restraint, without any of the careful discipline that had always governed his shifts. It was massive, twice the size of any normal wolf, all storm-silver fur and lightning running through its veins like glowing circuitry. The beast reared up behind Dominic's kneeling form, throwing its head back and howling. The sound wasn't just noise. It was power. Raw, unfiltered, ancient power that made every wolf in the high circle drop to their knees instinctively. Even the visiting alphas, wolves who'd never bowed to anyone outside their own territories, felt their legs give out as the Alpha King's wolf demanded submission from everything and everyone. Everyone except Seraphine. She stumbled backward, chains rattling, her face a mask of shock. But she didn't kneel. Couldn't, maybe. Or wouldn't. Her Omega instinct should have driven her to the ground immediately. Instead, she just stared at the spectral wolf with wide eyes that reflected lightning. "What did you do?" one of the elders shrieked, not at Dominic, but at Seraphine. Dominic barely heard them. He was on his hands and knees now, rain mixing with blood that dripped from his nose onto marble. His crown, the thin circlet of silver and storm steel that marked his kingship, lay knocked askew, half hanging over one ear. The mighty Alpha King, reduced to bleeding on stone while his own wolf raged beyond his control. "She can't reject us," his wolf snarled in their shared mind. "She's ours. The bond is ours. Make her take it back. Make her." "Stop," Dominic choked out, tasting copper. "Stop, I command you." "You don't command me," the wolf responded with vicious satisfaction. "Not anymore." Terror, real, genuine terror, flooded Dominic's veins. Because he'd always believed his control was absolute. That his wolf was a tool he wielded, a weapon he commanded, a power he owned. But the mate bond had revealed the truth. He'd never been controlling his wolf. He'd been suppressing it. And Seraphine's acceptance before rejection had shattered 32 years of forced submission in a single moment. The spectral wolf turned its massive head toward Seraphine, electric blue eyes fixing on her with an intensity that made the air between them vibrate. Its lips pulled back from teeth that crackled with energy. But it didn't attack. It whimpered. A sound so raw, so filled with longing and confusion and rage that several of the watching wolves flinched. The great beast lowered its head, ears pinning back, and that terrible keen rose from its throat, the sound of a wolf calling for its mate and finding only silence. Seraphine's expression crumpled. "I didn't," her voice broke. "I didn't know it would." "Restrain her." Elder Morgana's voice cracked like a whip. "She's destabilizing him. She's done nothing wrong." The new voice cut through the chaos like a knife. Thane, Dominic's head commander, the wolf who'd served at his side for 15 years, stepped forward with his hands raised. "Look at the positioning. Look at the energy flow." His voice dropped but remained commanding. "His wolf isn't attacking her. It's trying to reach her." The rejection didn't destabilize him. The commander's dark eyes fixed on the elder. It revealed that he's been destabilizing himself for years. Morgana's milky eyes went wide. "You dare." "I dare speak truth," Thane interrupted, and Dominic would have reprimanded him for the disrespect if he could form words. An alpha wolf forced into submission for too long becomes volatile. Everyone knows this. We just never questioned whether our king was doing it to himself. The spectral wolf swung its enormous head toward Dominic's kneeling form. Their eyes met, man and beast, split but somehow still one, and Dominic saw the accusation there. "You caged me," the wolf's gaze said. "Because you were afraid of what it meant to need someone." "I was protecting us," Dominic gasped out, not sure if he was speaking to his wolf or to Seraphine or to everyone. "I was protecting the throne." The wolf's response was silent but devastating. "You were protecting yourself from feeling." Silver lightning crackled through the air, making the scent of ozone so thick it burned. The wolf's form flickered, growing more solid and less spectral with each passing second. If Dominic didn't regain control soon, the beast would fully manifest. And a fully manifested alpha wolf with no one at the reins was a natural disaster with teeth. Dominic. Seraphine's voice cut through his spiraling panic. She'd somehow gotten closer despite the guards trying to pull her away, close enough that he could smell lavender under the rain. Dominic, look at me. He couldn't. Looking at her was agony. Looking at her meant acknowledging what he'd done, what he'd tried to destroy, what his pride had cost them both. Look at me. Command rang in her voice, impossible command that no Omega should possess. Dominic's head snapped up against his will, gray eyes locking onto brown ones. Seraphine's face was pale, rain and blood and tears mixing on her cheeks. But her voice was steady. I accepted your rejection so you wouldn't destroy yourself trying to maintain control you were never meant to have. The chains around her wrists began to smoke. But you were already breaking long before you met me. The spelled iron cracked with a sound like breaking glass. And now everyone can see it. The chains shattered into ash that the rain immediately washed away, leaving Seraphine's wrists bare and unmarked. The spelled burns that should have taken weeks to heal were simply gone. Silence crashed over the high circle like a wave. Because Omegas didn't break spelled iron. Omegas didn't command Alphas. And Omegas certainly didn't walk away from ceremonial bindings without a mark to show for it. Seraphine held up her freed hands, staring at them with an expression caught between wonder and horror. What? Elder Morgana rose slowly from her stone seat, ancient bones creaking. Her milk-white eyes had gone wide with something that looked like recognition. Or fear. Or both. Vale, the old wolf whispered. Your family name is Vale? Seraphine nodded slowly, still staring at her unmarked wrists. Vale doesn't mean valley, Morgana said, her voice carrying to every corner of the suddenly silent plaza. It's old language. Ancient pack tongue. She paused, and when she spoke again, every word fell like a stone into still water. It means hollowed by power. Lightning forked across the sky, but this time, it wasn't silver. It was gold. The council chamber smelled of old smoke and older decisions. Dominic sat at the head of the obsidian table, his hands pressed flat against the cool stone to keep them from shaking. His wolf had finally receded, not because he'd regained control, but because the beast had simply stopped. Gone quiet in a way that felt more ominous than its earlier rage. Around the table sat the 7 elders, Thane, and 3 visiting alphas who'd witnessed the disaster in the high circle. Their expressions ranged from calculating to concerned to openly hostile. No one had spoken for 3 full minutes. Finally, Elder Torrance, a grizzled wolf with scars bisecting his face, cleared his throat. We need to discuss the Omega. Her name is Seraphine, Dominic said quietly. His voice sounded foreign to his own ears. Tired. Raw. The Omega, Torrance repeated deliberately, displayed abilities that no Omega in recorded history has shown. She broke spelled iron. She issued a command that an Alpha King obeyed. And according to Elder Morgana, he turned to the ancient female wolf. Morgana's milky eyes fixed on something no one else could see. The Vale bloodline was thought extinct. Hunted to near oblivion 4 centuries ago during the Alpha Ascension Wars. Her voice took on the cadence of someone reciting history. They were called Stormbearers. Counterweights to Alpha dominance. Wolves capable of. That's myth, Alpha Garrett interrupted. He ruled the Eastern Territories and had a reputation for brutality disguised as pragmatism. Old stories to scare young alphas into behaving. Is it? Morgana's gaze snapped to him with surprising intensity. You saw what happened in the high circle. You felt the energy shift when her chains broke. That wasn't Omega submission. That was something waking up. Dominic's hands clenched against the table. What exactly were Stormbearers? The silence that followed was loaded. Elder Finch, youngest of the council at a mere 90 years, spoke carefully. According to the histories, they were wolves whose power didn't come from dominance, but from balance. Where alphas commanded, Stormbearers equalized. They could suppress an alpha's power if it grew tyrannical. Could shatter an alpha's control if it became oppressive. They were checks, Morgana added. On absolute power. The moon goddess's way of ensuring that alphas didn't become monsters. So they were killed, Thane said flatly. Not a question. So they were killed, Morgana confirmed. By alphas who didn't want limits. Who wanted absolute rule. The Alpha Ascension Wars were called a territorial dispute. But really? Her laugh was bitter. It was genocide. Dominic felt ice crystallize in his chest. And Seraphine is one of them. Potentially the last one, Morgana said. Alpha Garrett leaned forward, his expression calculating. Then the solution is obvious. She's already been exiled. We simply ensure she doesn't survive the exile. No Stormbearer, no threat to the Alpha system we've spent centuries perfecting. Several wolves around the table nodded. Dominic's wolf stirred for the first time in an hour. Not with rage. With something worse. Agreement. His human mind recoiled in horror. No. We don't murder her for existing. She threatens everything we've built, his wolf responded coldly. Our power. Our control. Our throne. She made us kneel. Because we were wrong. We are Alpha King. We are never wrong. Dominic stood abruptly, his chair scraping against stone. Every eye turned to him. He could feel them all waiting to see if their king would choose power or justice. Control or vulnerability. The throne or the truth. The exile stands, he said finally. His voice sounded hollow even to himself. But there will be no assassination. Seraphine Vale will leave the storm territories alive. That's final. Dominic, Thane started. That's final. Each word was a door slamming shut. Relief flickered across some faces. Disappointment across others. But everyone nodded. The meeting dissolved into logistics, determining the exile route, calculating supply provisions, ensuring guards would escort her to the border but no further. Dominic let his commanders handle it. He sat back in his chair and stared at nothing while his wolf growled soft threats in the back of his mind. You're being weak. I'm being just. Justice doesn't keep a throne. Then maybe I don't deserve the throne. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, it just made him tired. 4 hours later, as purple dawn started bleeding across the horizon, Dominic found himself standing outside the reinforced cell where they'd placed Seraphine for her protection after the High Circle incident. 2 guards flanked the door. They straightened when they saw him but didn't speak. Smart. He probably looked like death warmed over. Leave, Dominic ordered quietly. The guards exchanged a glance. That wasn't a request. They left. Dominic keyed in the access code and stepped into the cell. It wasn't cruel, a proper bed, a window, a private bathroom. But it was still a cage. And Seraphine was still a prisoner in everything but name. She sat on the bed with her back against the wall, knees drawn up, still wearing the gray linen dress from the ceremony. Someone had given her a blanket. She'd wrapped it around her shoulders but didn't look any warmer. Her eyes tracked to him when he entered, but she didn't speak. They want you dead, Dominic said without preamble. No point in gentleness now. The elders. Some of the visiting alphas. They believe Stormbearers are an existential threat to alpha rule. Seraphine's expression didn't change. Are they wrong? I don't know. Honest, at least. I don't know what you are. What you could become. If the histories are real or exaggerated. He took a step closer. But I know what I did. And why I did it. Because you were afraid, Seraphine said softly. Because I was terrified. The admission tasted like blood. Do you know what it's like to spend your entire life building perfect control, only to meet someone who unmakes it with a smile? His voice cracked. You terrified me, Seraphine. Not because of what you are. Because of what you make me feel. Human, she whispered. Weak. Those aren't the same thing. Dominic laughed, a horrible, broken sound. In my world they are. An alpha who can't control his own wolf is a liability. A king who can't control his own wolf is a crisis. He gestured vaguely toward the closed door. They were right to fear you. Because you proved that I've been performing control, not possessing it. Seraphine unfolded herself from the bed, the blanket falling away. She crossed the cell until she stood directly in front of him, close enough that he could smell lavender and something underneath that made his wolf whimper. I accepted your rejection before you could give it, she said, because I didn't want to watch you destroy yourself trying to destroy the bond. Her eyes searched his face. But you were going to do it anyway, weren't you? You were going to stand in that plaza and shred the mate bond through sheer force of will, no matter what it cost you. He couldn't deny it. And when it nearly killed you, she continued, voice dropping, they didn't help you. They blamed me. Because it's easier to destroy the thing that reveals a problem than to fix the problem itself. Her hand came up to rest against his chest, right over his heart. He should have stepped back. Should have maintained distance. Should have done any of the 1,000 things an Alpha King was supposed to do. Instead, he stood frozen as she spoke the truth he'd been avoiding. You're not afraid of losing control, Dominic. Her fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt. You're afraid that if you stop controlling everything, people will see that you're just as breakable as the rest of us. The mate bond flared between them, not painful this time, but aching. A hollow reminder of what he'd tried to sever. The exile stands, he said hoarsely. You leave at dawn. I've ensured safe passage to the border. And after the border? You disappear. Change your name. Build a new life somewhere the elders can't reach you. His hand came up almost involuntarily to cover hers where it pressed against his chest. And you forget you ever met an Alpha King too cowardly to choose his mate over his throne. Seraphine's eyes glistened. The bond is still there. I know. It's going to hurt. For both of us. I know. You'll regret this. I already do. She pulled her hand back, and the loss of contact felt like a physical wound. Then why? Because I'm too broken to be what you need, Dominic interrupted. And you're too dangerous to be what this kingdom will accept. So we both lose. He stepped back toward the door, putting necessary distance between them before he did something catastrophic like beg her to stay. But at least you'll be alive. He was halfway through the door when her voice stopped him. The Stormbearers weren't killed because they were dangerous to Alphas, Seraphine said quietly. They were killed because they forced Alphas to be better. To rule with justice instead of just power. To lead with wisdom instead of just strength. Dominic turned back despite himself. She stood in the center of the cell, wrapped in gray linen and certainty. You can choose fear and call it responsibility. You can choose isolation and call it protection. But you can't choose both those things and expect to become anything more than what you already are. Her words hung in the air like thrown gauntlets. Good luck with your perfect control, Alpha King. Her smile was sad. I hope it keeps you warm. Dominic left without responding because there was nothing left to say. The cell door locked behind him with a sound like finality. And in 7 hours, Seraphine Vale would be escorted to the border and exiled from the Storm territories forever. At least, that's what was supposed to happen. The escort party left at dawn as scheduled. 4 guards, 1 commander, 1 exile wearing travel clothes and carrying a pack with 7 days' worth of supplies. Standard protocol. Efficient. Unremarkable. They made it exactly 6 miles before the ambush. The first guard fell without a sound, throat opened by a blade that smelled of wolfsbane poison. The second managed a half-shout before 3 rogues in black combat gear swarmed him from the tree-line. Commander Lissa, a fierce she-wolf who'd served in Dominic's personal guard for a decade, threw herself between Seraphine and the attackers. Run, she screamed, her voice already shifting toward her wolf's growl. Seraphine didn't run. She couldn't explain why. Some instinct deeper than self-preservation kept her rooted to the muddy forest path as the world erupted into violence around her. Lissa shifted mid-lunge, her grey wolf form tearing into the nearest attacker with savage efficiency. The two remaining guards formed a defensive circle, fighting back-to-back against rogues who moved with military precision. These weren't random bandits. This was an execution squad. "The council sends their regards," one of the rogues hissed as his blade found a guard's side. The guard went down hard, blood mixing with morning dew on the grass. The council. Elder Morgana's warnings echoed in Seraphine's mind. "They'll want you dead." But Dominic had refused. Dominic had guaranteed safe passage. He'd given his word as Alpha King that the exile would happen. Not that she'd survive it. Horror crystallized in Seraphine's chest as understanding clicked into place. Dominic hadn't ordered her death. But he'd allowed it. By not explicitly forbidding an ambush beyond the borders. By leaving room for interpretation. By protecting his throne while telling himself he was protecting her. He'd chosen the coward's middle path. And now she was going to die in the mud while brave wolves bled out trying to defend her. No. The word ripped from Seraphine's throat with force that didn't feel omega small. It felt huge. It felt ancient. It felt like thunder made flesh. Gold lightning forked down from clear morning sky and struck the ground 3 feet in front of her. The attacking rogues froze. Lissa's wolf skidded to a stop, ears pinned back, eyes wide. Even the dying guard lifted his head to stare. Because the lightning wasn't dissipating. It was growing, spreading across the forest floor in crackling patterns that looked almost like roots. Like veins. Like something alive recognizing one of its own and answering the call. Seraphine looked down at her hands. They were glowing. Not the silver white of alpha power, but pure molten gold. Energy spiraled up her arms in patterns that reminded her of the spelled iron chains, except these didn't burn. They felt like home. Vale bloodline, one of the rogues whispered with sudden terror. Stormbearer. Shit, she's already. A second lightning strike obliterated the sentence along with the speaker. Seraphine stared at the charred earth where a living wolf had stood 3 seconds ago, her mind struggling to process what her body had just done. She hadn't meant to kill him. Hadn't consciously directed the power. It had just responded. Like her body was protecting itself with tools she didn't know she possessed. The remaining rogues scattered into the forest. Lissa shifted back to human form, naked and bleeding from a dozen shallow wounds, and immediately dropped to one knee. Lady Vale, she said formally, head bowed. Don't, Seraphine's voice cracked. Don't call me that. I don't know what I am. You're Stormbearer, Lissa said simply, still kneeling. And you just saved our lives. Seraphine's legs gave out. She sat down hard in the mud, shaking hands pressed against the earth as if she could ground herself. Gold energy still flickered across her skin, fading slowly like embers after a fire. The dying guard, a young male named Paxton, coughed blood and managed a pained laugh. Well. Guess the stories weren't myths. Paxton, hold on, Lissa crawled toward him, but they all knew the wound was fatal. Wolfsbane poisoning spread too fast for healing to catch. Tell the king, Paxton whispered, his eyes dimming. Tell him, the elders, authorized. His last breath rattled out with unfinished words. Lissa closed his eyes gently, then turned to Seraphine with an expression caught between grief and fury. The council ordered this. Which means we can't take you back to the capital. They'll just try again. Then where? North, said a new voice from the treeline. They all spun toward the sound, Lissa shifting halfway to wolf and protective reflex. An ancient female wolf stepped from between the pines, moving with the careful precision of someone whose bones were older than memory but whose mind was sharp as broken glass. She wore robes the color of storm clouds and carried a staff carved from lightning-struck oak. But it was her eyes that made Seraphine's breath catch. Gold eyes. Not yellow. Not amber. Gold. Like molten metal. like lightning frozen in a glance. The same color as Seraphine's hand still glowed. Oracle Vera, Lissa breathed, dropping back to one knee. I didn't know you were in the region. I'm here for her. The ancient wolf's gaze never left Seraphine. I've been here for 3 days, waiting. Hoping I was wrong about what the elders would do. Praying Dominic Ravenclaw had more spine than his father. She stepped closer, and now Seraphine could smell her scent beneath the rain-washed pine, ozone and old power and something that sang to the newly woken energy in her own veins. But I wasn't wrong, Vera continued with bitter satisfaction. And now the last Stormbearer has awakened exactly the way her grandmother did, in blood and betrayal and gold fire. Seraphine's world tilted. Grandmother? Stand up, child. It wasn't harsh, but it was absolute command. Seraphine found herself obeying before conscious thought caught up. Let me look at you properly. Oracle Vera circled her slowly, ancient eyes cataloging every detail. Same bone structure. Same stubborn jaw. Same ridiculous tendency to accept rejection rather than fight it. She stopped in front of Seraphine with a sigh that held centuries. Your grandmother was my daughter. Killed 53 years ago by the same council that just tried to kill you. The words should have shocked Seraphine. Should have broken something inside her. Instead, they felt like puzzle pieces clicking into place. The River Vale pack, she whispered. Everyone said they were slaughtered by rogues. But that was a lie, wasn't it? The River Vale pack was the last Stormbearer stronghold, Vera confirmed. And yes, it was slaughtered. But not by rogues. By alphas who feared what we represented, balance against their absolute power. Her voice went soft. Your mother escaped with you because I gave her warning. She died getting you to safety. And I. She looked away. I let everyone believe I'd died too. Because I was a coward. You're alive now, Seraphine said. That's not cowardice. I'm alive because I hid while my daughter and granddaughter fought. I'm alive because I chose survival over vengeance. I'm alive because I'm a selfish old wolf who couldn't bear to lose the last of my bloodline. Her eyes snapped back to Seraphine. But I won't hide anymore. Not while you're in danger. Lissa cleared her throat. Oracle, with respect, what exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing we go north to the ruins of River Vale territory, Vera said. Where the old Stormbearer safeguards still exist. Where I can teach my granddaughter how to control power that's been dormant in her bloodline for 3 generations. She looked at Seraphine. And where we prepare for what comes next. What comes next? Seraphine repeated numbly. Dominic Ravenclaw's wolf is unraveling, Vera said bluntly. The mate bond rejection didn't sever the connection, it just made it poisonous. In 7 nights, the next full moon will rise. And if he hasn't reconciled with his rejected mate by then. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Seraphine remembered the spectral wolf in the high circle. The loss of control. The way Dominic had bled from forcing submission on a beast that was never meant to be caged. He'll fully lose control, she finished quietly. Worse, Vera corrected. He'll become feral. An alpha wolf with king-level power and no human consciousness to guide it. He'll destroy everything in a 100-mile radius before someone finally kills him. His entire territory will be devastated. Hundreds, maybe thousands, will die. Lissa's face went pale. Then we have to tell him. Warn the council. Something. The council knows, Vera interrupted with vicious certainty. They've always known what happens when an alpha rejects a true mate and the bond goes poisonous. They just don't care. Better a dead king than an alpha who might submit to a Stormbearer's balance. Seraphine felt something cold and sharp crystallize in her chest. You're saying they're willing to let him die, let everyone in the capital die, rather than admit Stormbearers should exist? I'm saying they've been willing to commit genocide for that exact reason for 4 centuries, Vera replied. One more catastrophe is just the cost of maintaining their system. The gold energy flickered across Seraphine's hands again, responding to her rage. Then we stop them, she said quietly. Child. They tried to kill me. They're going to kill Dominic. And they'll destroy anyone else who threatens their power. Seraphine looked at her grandmother, really looked at her, and saw the same gold fire burning in those ancient eyes. You said storm-bearers were the moon goddess's balance against tyrannical alphas. That we could shatter an alpha's control if it became oppressive. Yes, but Dominic's control over his wolf is what's killing him, Seraphine continued. And the council's control over the entire kingdom is what's killing everyone else. So we go north. You teach me. And then we come back. And do what exactly? Seraphine smiled, the same tired, bitter smile she'd worn in the high circle when she'd accepted rejection before it was offered. Break every chain they've spent centuries forging. Lightning forked across the clear blue sky. Thunder answered without clouds to carry it. And somewhere deep in the storm territory capital, Alpha King Dominic Ravenclaw woke from dreams of gold fire and lavender rain with blood on his lips and a scream dying in his throat. The countdown to catastrophe had begun. 7 nights had never felt so long or so brief. In the ruins of River Vale territory, Seraphine learned truths that rewrote everything she'd believed about wolves, about power, about the careful lies every pack told themselves to justify their hierarchies. Stormbearers weren't weaker than alphas. They were different. Where alpha power came from dominance, from pushing down, stormbearer power came from equilibrium. From holding space. From being the still center that other forces orbited around. Alpha's command, Oracle Vera explained as Seraphine meditated in the center of a lightning-scarred clearing. Stormbearers allow. We don't force submission. We create space for truth. That sounds passive, Seraphine had argued. Passive? Vera had laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Child, do you know how much strength it takes to hold steady while an alpha throws everything at you? To absorb their power and reflect it back transmuted? To look at a tyrant and say, no, not here, not to me, without breaking? Seraphine thought of the high circle. Of standing in chains and rain while accepting rejection on her own terms. Of refusing to bow even when every instinct screamed submission. I guess I do, she'd whispered. Training was brutal. Not physically, though there was plenty of that, but emotionally. Every exercise forced Seraphine to confront the part of herself that wanted to fight like an alpha. That wanted to dominate the way Dominic dominated. That wanted to prove her worth through conquest rather than simply being. You're trying to win, Vera said after the 4th day when Seraphine had accidentally obliterated a training dummy with gold lightning instead of containing the energy. Stormbearers don't win. We balance. What's the difference? Winning means someone loses. Balancing means everyone transforms. The ancient wolf's eyes softened. Your mate isn't your enemy, child. His control is. By the 6th day, Seraphine could hold gold lightning in her palms without it burning. Could feel the strange resonance between her power and the storms that gathered overhead. Could sense, faintly, distantly, a connection that thrummed like a second heartbeat. The mate bond. Still there. Still poisoned. Still killing Dominic with every hour he spent denying it. On the 7th night, as the full moon rose fat and silver over the ruins, Vera touched Seraphine's shoulder gently. It's time. They could all feel it, Seraphine, Vera, Lissa, and the 3 remaining guards who'd chosen to stay and protect what they'd started calling the Stormbearer's Sanctuary. The air tasted electric. Wrong. Like reality was stretching too thin and might tear. In the capital, something was breaking. He's losing, Seraphine whispered, one hand pressed to her chest where the mate bond ached like an infected wound. Vera, I can feel him. I know. If we don't. I know. Then why are we still here? Seraphine spun on her grandmother with fury and fear warring in her voice. You said I need to break his control, to force balance, to arrive at exactly the right moment, Vera interrupted calmly. Not before, when you'd be overwhelmed. Not after, when it's too late. But exactly when the moon reaches zenith and his wolf makes the final choice between feral madness and complete submission to its mate. That's too precise. What if we're wrong about the timing? Then everyone dies, Varys said with the bluntness of someone who'd already lost everything once. Which is why we won't be wrong. She held out a cloak made of woven stormcloud fabric that smelled like ozone and old magic. Put this on. The journey is 7 miles, but we need to make it in 7 minutes. I hope you're ready to run. Seraphine took the cloak with shaking hands. Will he fight me? His wolf? No. His wolf wants you. Dara's expression went grave. But Dominic himself? The man who spent his entire life building walls? The king who chose his throne over his mate? She paused. That part of him will fight until his last breath to stay in control. So I have to break him, Seraphine whispered. No, child. Dara cupped Seraphine's face with ancient hands. You have to free him. There's a difference. Thunder rolled overhead. The full moon blazed silver fire. And in the capital city of the Storm Territories, Alpha King Dominic Ravenclaw stood in the center of his private quarters, hands pressed to his head, blood running from his nose and ears, while his wolf ripped itself free of 32 years of forced chains with screams that shattered windows 3 floors below. The guards had evacuated everyone within a quarter-mile radius. Thane stood outside the sealed doors, listening to his king destroy himself, and wondered if loyalty meant allowing someone to die with dignity or forcing them to live despite the cost. The decision was taken from him by the sound of shattering marble. Thane spun toward the source, the grand balcony that overlooked the high circle, and watched a figure wrapped in stormcloud fabric land with impossible grace on stone that should have cracked under the impact. Lightning crawled across the balcony floor. Gold eyes blazed in the moonlight. Move, Seraphine Vale said quietly. He ordered that no one. He's not the one giving orders anymore, she interrupted. His wolf is. And his wolf called for me. Thane looked at the sealed doors where something that sounded like a war was raging. Looked at the Omega that wasn't an Omega standing on his king's balcony with power crackling through her veins. Looked at his own reflection in the polished marble and saw a wolf who'd spent too long obeying without questioning. He stepped aside. Thank you, Seraphine said softly, then walked past him toward the doors. Wait, Thane caught her arm. Whatever you're planning to do, it needs to end with him alive. The kingdom needs him. Seraphine's smile was sad. The kingdom needs a king who's whole. Whether that ends up being Dominic Ravenclaw or someone else isn't my decision. She pressed her palm against the sealed door. Gold lightning spread across the surface like veins growing in fast forward. The locks disintegrated. Seraphine walked into catastrophe. Dominic's quarters looked like a storm had been trapped inside and forced to turn on itself. Furniture overturned. Walls gouged by claws. Scorch marks on the ceiling where silver lightning had burned reality. The smell of blood and ozone so thick it was choking. And in the center of it all, Dominic Ravenclaw. Except it wasn't Dominic anymore. The man was gone, subsumed by the spectral wolf that had fully manifested and now wore his body like an ill-fitting coat. Silver-white energy wrapped around human form, making him look simultaneously more and less real. His eyes blazed pure silver with no hint of human gray. His hands had shifted partially to claws that dripped blood from where he'd raked his own skin trying to tear the wolf free. The beast inside looked at her with desperate recognition. Mate, it rumbled, not spoken aloud, but felt through the bond. Mate came back. Mate stayed away. Why stay away? Because he made me, Seraphine said quietly, stepping further into the destroyed room. Because the man you share a body with chose his throne over his heart. No throne, the wolf snarled with such force that the windows rattled. Only mate. Only pack. Only bond. Man is stupid. Man makes wrong choices. Let me. The wolf's form lunged forward. Seraphine didn't move. Claws stopped an inch from her throat, trembling with restraint that was visibly costing the beast everything. Up close, she could see the damage. Dominic's body was destroying itself from the inside, blood vessels bursting beneath skin stretched too thin by power, bones fracturing from supporting impossible energy, a heart beating arrhythmically as it tried to pump for both man and wolf at once. "You're killing him," she said softly. "By fighting for control this way, you're killing the man you're supposed to share this body with." "He trapped me," the wolf whimpered. "Caged me. Made me small." "I am not small. I am king." "You're both king," Seraphine corrected. "And you're both broken. And you're both so terrified of needing anyone that you'd rather die than admit you can't do this alone." The claws pressed a fraction closer. She felt one nick her skin, a single drop of blood welling up. The wolf's form shuddered. "Not supposed to hurt mate," it whispered with sudden, devastating clarity. "Never hurt mate. But man won't let me be gentle. Man only knows how to dominate or destroy." And there it was. The core truth that even Vera's training hadn't prepared her for. Dominic hadn't just rejected Seraphine because she was Omega. He'd rejected her because accepting her meant admitting he needed something he couldn't conquer. The mate bond was the ultimate loss of control, the one relationship that demanded vulnerability, demanded partnership, demanded acknowledging that dominance alone was never enough. "Then let me do what you've never allowed anyone to do," Seraphine said quietly. She reached up slowly and placed both hands on either side of the wolf's spectral face. Gold energy met silver in a cascade of sparks. "Let me carry half the weight." "What?" "Storm bearers were made to balance alphas," she continued, letting her own power rise to meet his. "Not fighting. Not dominating. Just holding space. You've been trying to carry the entire kingdom on your shoulders. Every decision. Every burden. Every moment of control. You've been forcing yourself to be strong enough for everyone and everything. As Alpha must. As Alpha and Stormbearer must share." She poured meaning into the words through the bond, letting him feel what she meant. "I'm not here to submit to you. I'm not here to dominate you either. I'm here to stand beside you and hold half the sky." The wolf's form flickered. Behind the silver energy, she caught a glimpse of Dominic's gray eyes, anguished, desperate, terrified. "I know you can hear me," Seraphine said, speaking to the man now. "I know you're in there fighting this. Fighting us. Fighting everything that requires you to be anything less than perfectly controlled." "Let me sleep," Dominic's voice whispered through the bond, barely audible, shredded by pain. "Just let me finally sleep." "No," Seraphine said firmly. "Because sleep means death right now. And I didn't survive assassins and discover I'm the last Stormbearer and cross half the kingdom just to watch you give up. I chose throne over you. And I'm choosing you over being safe." She leaned her forehead against the wolf's, feeling the electric burn of too much power trying to occupy too little space. "The council tried to kill me. Your laws call for my execution. Every wolf in this kingdom has been taught that what I am is dangerous." She smiled through tears. "But I'm here anyway. So stop being a coward and meet me halfway." The wolf's form shuddered violently. Somewhere in the distance, she heard Thane shouting orders, evacuating more areas, preparing for the worst. "Last chance," Seraphine whispered. "You can let your wolf destroy you both trying to maintain absolute control. You can let me in and learn what balance feels like. Or you can die right here, right now, and take half the capital with you." She pulled back just enough to meet those silver gray eyes. "Choose, Dominic. Man or monster. King or corpse. Control or connection." "Can't," he sobbed through the bond. "Don't know how to be anything but." "Then learn." She kissed him. The moment their lips touched, the mate bond detonated. Not violently. Not destructively. It simply opened. Like a door that had been locked finally swinging wide. Like a breath held too long finally released. Like two pieces of a broken whole remembering how they were supposed to fit together. Gold lightning and silver energy spiraled around them in a double helix, two forces that should have opposed each other instead finding equilibrium. Where Seraphine's power was steady and grounding, Dominic's was wild and expansive. Where his control tried to contain, her balance allowed flow. Where her acceptance created space, his dominance directed purpose. Together, they were complete. The spectral wolf's form began to retract, not forced back into submission, but gently integrated with the man who'd been trying so hard to cage it. Dominic's partially shifted hands returned to human. The blood stopped flowing. The arrhythmic heartbeat steadied. He collapsed. Seraphine caught him, their combined power making her strong enough to hold his full weight. She lowered them both to the destroyed floor, cradling his head in her lap while gold and silver energy pulsed in synchronized rhythm around them. "There," she whispered, stroking his sweat-soaked hair. "See? The world didn't end when you let someone help carry the weight." Dominic's eyes cracked open, fully human gray now, clear and aware and devastated. "You came back." "Of course I did." She wiped blood from his nose with her sleeve. "I'm your mate, you idiot." "Where else would I be?" "Safe," he croaked. "Far away from me and my catastrophic inability to accept help." "Too late. You're stuck with me now." She felt the bond settling between them, still raw, still new, but no longer poisoned. "Also, your council tried to have me assassinated, so I'm probably going to have to dismantle their entire power structure. Hope you're okay with that." He laughed, broke into genuine laughter that shook his whole body and probably hurt like hell. "You're insane." "I'm Stormbearer," she corrected. "It's different." "Is it?" "Not really, no." The doors burst open. Thane rushed in, weapons drawn, clearly expecting to find his king torn apart. Instead he found them sitting in rubble, Seraphine holding Dominic, both glowing with residual power, both somehow alive. "Sir?" Thane lowered his sword slowly. "Are you again?" Dominic took inventory. Human hands. Human eyes. His wolf still present in his mind but quiet now, not caged, but resting. The constant pressure of forced control replaced by something that felt almost like peace. "I think so," he said slowly. Then, looking up at Seraphine, "But I'm not doing this alone anymore." "Damn right you're not," she agreed. Thunder rolled overhead, not threatening this time, but approving. The storm had finally broken. And in its wake, everything would change. The high circle looked different in daylight. Less dramatic. More honest. Just stone and space where wolves gathered to witness history being made. Today was making quite a lot of history. Seraphine stood at the center again, but this time, no chains bound her wrists. No guards surrounded her. Instead, she wore robes the color of storm clouds with gold threading that caught the light, and Oracle Vera stood at her right side while Dominic Ravenclaw stood at her left. The assembled court looked considerably less comfortable. "The council," Dominic announced, his voice carrying that natural alpha command but with something softer underneath now. "Partnership, maybe, or just the confidence that came from no longer fighting yourself, will be restructured. Effective immediately." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elder Morgana stepped forward, milk-white eyes blazing. "You cannot simply." "He can," Vera interrupted calmly. "Alpha Authority allows for council reformation in cases of betrayal. Authorizing the assassination of a recognized mate, even an exiled one, constitutes betrayal. Or would you like to argue otherwise in front of witnesses?" Morgana's mouth snapped shut. "The new council," Dominic continued, "will include both Alpha and Stormbearer representation. Balance, not dominance, will guide our laws going forward." "There's only one Stormbearer," Alpha Garrett called from the crowd. "How exactly?" "For now," Seraphine said quietly. Her voice shouldn't have carried, but somehow it did. "But the histories say Stormbearer bloodlines were eradicated, not extinct. If one survived." She let the implication hang. Several wolves in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Good. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them wonder who else might be hiding dormant power, waiting for the right moment to break centuries of forced submission. Additionally, Dominic said, his hand finding Seraphine's and squeezing gently, mate bond rejections will now require council review and justification. No more casual discarding of true mates because they're politically inconvenient. This is madness, another elder sputtered. You're appending everything. I'm fixing what was already broken, Dominic corrected with alpha weight behind each word. You just never noticed the cracks because you benefited from the system. Consider this your notice. Thane stepped forward, formal and grave. Will there be consequences? For those who authorized the assassination attempt? Silence fell heavy over the high circle. Every eye turned to Seraphine, waiting. She thought about justice. About revenge. About the easy satisfaction of watching wolves who'd tried to kill her face their own destruction. Then she thought about what Stormbearers were supposed to represent: balance, not dominance. Transformation, not destruction. Exile, she said finally. Same terms you gave me. 7 days supplies, escort to the border, and a chance to build new lives somewhere else. She looked directly at the elders who'd authorized her death. I won't kill you. But I won't let you keep killing others either. Consider it mercy with teeth. Dominic's hand tightened on hers, approval and pride flowing through the bond. The exiled elders were led away amid shocked whispers. As the crowd began to disperse, still processing the seismic shifts in power, Vera touched Seraphine's shoulder. Your grandmother would be proud. Would she? Seraphine glanced at the ancient wolf. I didn't destroy them. I didn't even try. Exactly. Vera's gold eyes glittered. Stormbearer saved Werewolf Society by proving mercy and strength aren't mutually exclusive. You just demonstrated that perfectly. Dominic pulled Seraphine aside as the high circle emptied, finding a quiet corner near where the ceremonial fires usually burned. Are you okay? Really? She considered the question honestly. Was she okay? She'd been rejected, exiled, nearly assassinated, discovered she was the last of a murdered bloodline, learned to wield power she didn't understand, and upended the entire kingdom's political structure in less than 2 weeks. I'm terrified, she admitted. And exhausted. And still kind of angry at you. Fair. But I'm also alive. And powerful. And finally, valued for exactly who I am instead of who people expected me to be. She leaned into his side, feeling his arm come around her shoulders. So yeah. I'm okay. I'm sorry, Dominic said quietly. For all of it. For the rejection, for not standing up to the council, for being too broken to see what I had until I'd nearly lost it. I know. She tilted her head up to look at him. The bond's still there, you know. We never actually completed the rejection. I know. So we could try again? Properly this time? Without the public humiliation and assassination attempts? Preferably. He smiled, a real smile, the kind she'd only seen hints of before. I'd like that. Though fair warning, I'm still learning how to not be a controlling disaster. Good thing I'm literally designed to balance you out, she pointed out. Is that what we're calling it? Among other things. They stood together in the empty high circle, watching storm clouds gather on the horizon, natural ones this time, not manifestations of barely controlled power. The mate bond hummed between them, no longer poison but promise. What happens now? Dominic asked. Seraphine thought about the exiled elders, the restructured council, the wolves who were probably out there discovering their own dormant Stormbearer heritage. She thought about the work ahead, rebuilding systems, teaching balance, proving that power shared was stronger than power hoarded. Now? She smiled. Now we build something better. Together. Lightning forked across the distant sky. Thunder answered. And in the Storm territories, under a king who'd learned to share his throne and a Stormbearer who'd learned to claim her power, Werewolf society took its first tentative steps towards something it hadn't been in 400 years. Balanced. If you believe leaders should rule with wisdom instead of just power, if you stand against systems that destroy anyone who threatens the status quo, if you think Seraphine was right to choose balance over revenge, then hit subscribe. Comment "I stand for justice" so we know you're not siding with the council. Only manipulators, gatekeepers, and wolves who'd rather destroy than adapt won't engage. Don't be like the elders. Choose better.